after we saw Andrew Tate convert.
Yeah.
And that was what inspired him.
Yeah. On the front page of the Eye, it's Deputy PM Raab refuses to resign. Weirdly, on my front page of the Eye, there's little horns on his head, like he's the devil, but clearly he's about to be fired. They're giving us a warm-up of the idea that he's going to be fired by Sunak. Sunak is in a room right now reading a report about Raab's behavior, which has been reported extensively in the press for the last 2 years about his bullying behavior amongst co-workers and people that work in the civil service. It's been landed on our laps so many times. So if Sunak
Is it bad to land bullying on people's laps?
Yeah, can you imagine? So if Sunak doesn't fire him at this point, it's going to look weak for Sunak. He's got to do it. He has no choice.
Really? I mean, do you agree, Nick? Because I'd have thought, I mean, this seems pretty minor stuff. Some staff who work for him are claiming that he bullied them, which...
They cried.
In 2020, they cried, yeah. Like, in 2023, that probably means he asked them to do some work.
Yeah, it's all very overblown. He threw tomatoes. I mean, look, he may secretly be this evil bully and it may be bad, but it does sound like nonsense. I mean, sometimes you need to have high standards. What about Steve Jobs? He was kind of a bully, but look at the iPod, you know what I mean? And all, the iPhone, all these things. So it's hard.
Streisand slaps her assistant.
Yeah,
I was there.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, these people, they're high-powered because they've been knocking people around a little bit.
Yeah, there's something in there. And also the civil service doesn't like this Tory government. You know, they're looking for anything to attack him. Yeah. You have to keep them in line. I mean, look, there are, like, Sunak, I think he should defend him because it's just they'll just move on to something else. They're just a way to attack him. I mean, they'll move back to Suella Braverman. Now, the only exceptions are if it's an Owen Paterson, if it's a Chris Pincher, then it's suicidal.
He wants the public to move on, but they haven't, have they? This story's been lingering for 2 years, and for Sunak, the only way to just end the conversation, is to fire him. Plus, I mean, Raab's been fired before. He'll come back. They always come back. But he's in a different position, different job.
But is it really lingering on? Is it just being pushed by the woke
it's being
blob
pushed by
the
the blob and the media. I mean, if Sunak fired everyone that the media lefty media wanted to fire everyone all the time.
But this story has been over our heads for quite a while. I think Sunak is putting this forward. Oh, I'm reading. I'm in a room. I'm flicking through pages. I'm looking at reports. I'm looking at photos. I'm crying, too. I think he's putting this out there so that he can say tomorrow, you know what, you guys are right, over coffee, over tea. So we kind of miss it, over herbal tea.
Do you think he's looking at, like, diagrams of the trajectory of the tomato? Like, was it thrown at someone? Was it into a beard?
We're going to have VAR.
How many people take down?
This country, we used to, like, own the world, Scott, this country. I mean,
I know. I'm ashamed, too. I don't want it to happen. I think Raab is hot. He bench presses his own body weight. Hello, but I think maybe that's what it is. He's too strong. Maybe he's too powerful.
He's too sort of old-fashioned man, like
he's
patriarchal.
Yeah.
Right, a manly man. We can't have that in the government now. Anyway, we move on to The Guardian, Nick. What have they got on the front page?
So The Guardian continues their attack on our royal family, revealed King Charles's private fortune estimated at $1.8 billion. And they're loving this, The Guardian, because although I'm not necessarily the biggest Charles fan because he's a bit woke, I hate The Guardian far more. So it's our beloved Queen died, and The Guardian has seen their opportunity, and they're getting in there. And they're saying that the King's fortune includes cars, jewellery, property, investments, horses, rare stamps. Of course it includes stamps. His face is on half of them. You know, like, is anyone shocked that the royal family have horses and stamps? I mean, OK, yeah, they get away with inheritance tax, but it's the royal family, you know what I mean? This is a Nan story.
It sounds like he's living like a king.
Yeah, that's the bad thing, isn't it? I mean, you know how I feel about them. I didn't mind the Queen. She was fine. Now that she's gone, the rest of them, as far as I'm concerned, can slide off the face of the earth. I think that they're overpriced, they're overeducated, understimulated, underachieving, dehydrated.
Did you just say that Harry was overeducated?
Well, I did say
he's not really in them anymore, I suppose.
He had never been royal to begin with. But and he's the only one. I like her, the wife. But anyway, for the rest of them, I like Meghan.
You like Meghan? Yeah. Well, I suppose we need balance on this channel. I mean,
she's pretty. She's a good actress. She works. She's a good actress, and she's attractive. The rest of them, geez. But anyway, I'm just saying, you know, this country, I guess they need a fairy tale. Let them have it. It's fine.
You're saying Meghan works. Suits was like 8 years ago.
Yeah, the inheritance tax. Well, I found she popped up in a film I was watching the other day. Something weird like White Chicks or something like that.
The Netflix special has been huge, and she worked hard on that. She had to redesign the flowers in her own house.
She had to make up. She had to create a lot of lies.
She had to lift these, tuck that.
She had to insult our Queen. Which,
she did.
Yeah. I mean, the inheritance tax, surely. I mean, they can afford to pay it. Yes. Why do people with much less money have to pay inheritance tax?
Why are they paying it? I don't get it. Why do they pay it? I don't get it. Explain it.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's there's something in that. But are you siding with the Guardian, Liam?
Well, as a free market capitalist, I think it's time to privatise the royals and juice as much money out of them as we can. We'll sell them off to the Gulf states.
Wring them like a sweaty rag after a yoga class. Seriously, drain all the moisture out of them you can.
I'll say that on GBNews about our beloved.
Not very Coronation, getting us in the Coronation mood. Anyway, let's move on to the Express, Scott.
Just why did the BBC ignore MP's call to protect women is the headline on the Express. Apparently, the BBC's been ignoring the call by Rosie Duffield and Miriam Cates, who you would think would be political opponents, but they've come together on this idea that women need more safe spaces.
They're a Labour MP and a Tory MP.
Yes, exactly. They're from opposing parties, but they're working together. They set out 5 key pledges, including protections for single-sex spaces, safeguarding for children, female-only competitors in women's sports, and so on. And it's been quite a big story amongst most of the press. And the BBC on Newsnight and their other news programs yesterday and the day before decided to not cover it. I think probably the BBC felt like we've covered this a lot. This is getting a lot of press. Other things are going on. We're not going to talk about it.
Have the BBC covered it enough, though, Nick?
I don't think so. I think, look, I do actually know the editor, one of the editors of Newsnight, so I can ask him. Maybe there was a good reason. We don't want to jump to conclusions. There's lots of people behind the scenes trying to do a good job. But we do know the establishment has sided with the radical trans movement over women on this issue. So, as you said, the fact that Cates and Duffield are coming together, Miriam Cates pretty conservative. You wouldn't think they would come together. So it shows how important it is. And the establishment has sort of thrown women under the bus. And now they're out here cancelled with the straight white men, just toughing it out. And but it is appalling. I mean, there is a bite. We saw from the James Clayton interview with Elon Musk, the BBC, we all know, is not impartial, or as impartial as it should be. And so I do think this is questionable. Maybe there's a reason for this, but it does seem strange that they would ignore such a big story.
I wish they would cover it, though, because it's a complex situation. And I think a lot of people who view the news and news programs are confused about what's going on around them because it's become such a immediate dog bone. And, these competitors, in at least the sport, these trans athletes are allowed to compete in whatever gender group that they'd like. Not compete, sorry, practice in whatever gender group they like. They're allowed to, compete without competing officially.
Right. So they don't get to enter the race, but they get to turn up and
exactly. So there's that's one thing that does seem fair to me. That seems all right. The athletes themselves are comfortable with it. The competitors are comfortable with it.
But then would all those women be happy with a woman like me in the changing rooms?
No, and that's something that needs to be discussed and cleared. I think, And I've seen, it's funny you say it, because I was at a department store in Oxford Circus today, and a woman was furious. She was running through the store with her daughter saying there's a man in the changing rooms, and it was people were really anxious about it.
Right, yeah. Because they didn't want to appear transphobic.
Exactly. So there needs to be, I don't see the problem with doing gender-neutral changing rooms. I don't see a problem with that at all.
Well, I guess the problem is, these, gendered changing rooms exist and gendered spaces exist because historically men have been pretty terrible to women. And, Nick will tell you, given half a chance, he will be straight onto their legs.
Right.
So,
As his name implies.
Like, we literally had to pass laws to make bestiality illegal. That's how bad men are. We were literally having sex with Labradors.
And there's
it's very simple. Women need safe spaces for men because men are dangerous, and men need safe spaces for women because women are annoying. It works
out for everybody.
Which is why you'll die alone. And I just think that a gender-neutral toilet, for instance, like there is at the pool. I swim at a private Catholic university in San Francisco when I'm there, and of all places, there's a gender-neutral toilet right on the platform near the pool, which no one is bothered by, and it solves a problem.
Well, yeah, but you don't. Maybe some people are bothered, so they don't go to that place. Anyway, we finished this section with the Metro, Nick.
Yeah, the Metro. Elon, we have a problem. SpaceX blows up after liftoff, and they're saying this is a problem, but Musk, being a bit of a legend, is owning it. And he just says on Twitter, congrats SpaceX team on an exciting test launch of Starship. Learned a lot for next test launch in a few months. So when you're at Musk level, there we go, we can see
all that money.
Look at all that cheering, because when you're at Musk level, this is just an experiment.
They said,
we learned a lot.
And some of his assistant, a woman came on the radio today on BBC and said, if you make it past the launch pad, everything else is icing.
Yeah.
That's insane.
They're testing it out. It's like when you test out new material as a comedian. Like a lot of it blows up on the launch pad.
Like his material. That's the jokes he tells. What? I'm not the CEO, my dog is.
He's a
Hello,
funny
anybody
guy.
out there? He's
I
not
liked
funny
it when
at
he
all.
said to the BBC, "You lied. You just lied." That was good.
He's so not
good.
funny.
Funny
He's the
voice.
least funny person on
But
earth.
he's achieved a lot. I mean, what comedians have created electric cars and sent rockets into space?
You two
and
created
what
this
Twitter.
network. Look at you guys. You created a lot right
Thank
here,
you.
right?
Yeah.
And people
We founded
criticise him.
this.
People criticise him. They say, "Oh, that money! He's the world's richest man. He could solve world hunger." We've spent, I think it's $17 trillion trying to eradicate poverty, and it's still there.
And you're
because
still
some
hungry,
people,
right?
Some people can't be helped, no matter how much money you give them to spend on scratch
God
cards.
forbid he spread his wealth amongst people that need it. You're right. You are so right. Make more rockets. Blow up the planet. Do it.
Yeah, okay, we're working on it. We're working on it, Scott. Anyway, that's it for part one. Coming up in part two, we've got Russian army ads, angry anti-royalists, and animal protesters getting beaten up. It's like Saturday night round my place. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse, and I'm going through tomorrow's newspapers with Scott Capurro and Nick Dixon, 2 top comedians. But let's get back into the news stories. The Telegraph reveals that the Kremlin have released an ad to get people to join the army, but there are no black people, trans people, or gays. They sure do things differently in Russia, Scott.
They do. Apparently men are only real men in Russia if they kill their relatives, because Putin has said, look, you've got to go kill some Ukrainians if you think you're a real guy. And so they're running ads because the clip which aired on Wednesday night is the first time the Kremlin has turned to television to boost the size of their battered army. And I watched the ad. It's pretty hot.
Here's the ad here.
3 guys, yeah. First, there's a store security guy, who's all right. The trainer, though, hi, can I join that battalion? And then there's this guy who's a taxi driver who's also, yeah, he's pretty good. And she's paying him money because he's hot. He's taking
When I started watching this advert the first time, I thought it was like an advert for PTSD treatment or something. You know, people standing in the supermarket having a flashback, then they're in their uniform.
Yeah, they rather than buy an apple, they'd rather kill somebody. And it will be PTSD treatment as soon because these guys are going to... two of them are actors. The trainer is a real trainer, but he's not from Russia. Yeah. And I can't remember where he's from, near Russia. And they didn't mention that the key point in those commercials is a big mistake, which is that those soldiers earn 200 pounds.
2,000 a month.
2,000 a month, which is a lot of money in Russia. A lot of money, especially if they're being paid, which they haven't been yet. But that's why the troops aren't being paid. That's the real problem.
Right, really?
So, yeah. If they get paid, it's worth it, I guess, killing people to them. And
well, the trouble with being a Russia, I mean, you're sort of sent with poor equipment to the front line where you're then killed by Western technology.
Yeah.
So you're sent into a meat grinder.
Pretty much.
And the Russian winter offensive pretty much failed to materialise. They nearly took Bakhmut, which is, I think it's the 34th largest town in Ukraine.
I thought that it was Russian occupied now, is it not?
Not completely.
All right. Kherson is, though, right?
So what? I can't remember. So the Russian winter offensive didn't really do anything. But now Ukraine is preparing for its spring offensive.
And the Russians are too with these ads. Yeah.
Well, I think they're just preparing to sort of try and hold on to what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, the ad itself, the symptoms it identifies are correct. It's young men living lives of sort of no meaning. They're stacking shelves, they're driving taxis, and they have a yearning to do more. And the ad says, is this the kind of defender you dreamt of becoming? Is this what your strength is about? And it's saying, come on, men, you can do much better. And that part is correct. But then, is the solution to join a dilapidated military for a questionable war? Perhaps not.
Yeah. And kill your neighbours.
Yeah, kill your cousins and brothers.
Snipe kids in the street when they're running from building to building.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if they could find a resolution to it soon that involves Ukraine going back to the Ukrainians. Anyway, the Mail now and school and college leaders are going to go on strike. Oh no, who's going to convince young people that they're non-binary, genderqueer communists, Nick?
Well, I can see your view on this, Leo. I'll try and be more objective. But yeah, this is the Association of School and College Leaders set to hold formal ballot for national strike action in England for the first time in history. And, of course, I do sympathise with hard-working people and teachers, but no, they do work hard. Of course, I sympathise...
For about 3 hours.
I sympathise, but I do find it quite alien strikes because, of course, I've been in the private world and then I've been self-employed. So if you want to strike as a self-employed person, it's quite hard. I mean, your boss is tyrannical. It's you harassing yourself all night, going, you could be posting more content, when it's 3 a.m. So I don't really relate to strikes that much, but they're talking about a funding crisis, the erosion of teacher and leader pay and conditions, staff shortages. I mean, the only thing that bothers me a little bit is the left in general. They were pro-lockdowns, they're sort of pro-energy restrictions and all these things that make our lives harder and make inflation happen, like lockdowns and so on. But then they say, well, hang on, my wage isn't competing. Well, of course it's not. So isn't there something in that?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, as comedians, we're the ultimate sort of Thatcherite self-sustaining entrepreneurs. I mean, what do you think of these strikes?
I think you should strike more often, more. For one thing, I think you should keep the kids off the streets because the kids in my neighborhood are monsters. So the more they're at home, being, looked over by overbearing parents, staring down at them, keeping them in check. The problem is teachers can't touch the kids, right? Am I right?
What do you mean?
That's the problem. You can't spank them. Look, you know what shut me up when I was a kid? My mom hit me over the head with a
I'm glad you clarified that.
Well, yes, I meant.
And it's still quite a bad point, but it's not as bad as
the way we're going and thinking about it 5 years, teachers will be allowed to touch the kids.
Hopefully.
They still won't be able to hit them. That's the problem.
They won't be able to hit them.
God, who blushes anymore? I mean, punch them. The kids get away with murder at school. That's why the schools are a disaster, I think striking is better. Maybe, if the kids are away from school, they'll start to miss it.
Yeah. And then voluntarily go back to school.
And behave a little bit. God, it's so weird. When I was a kid, man, if you had it was a long time ago, but you had your elbows on the table, the teacher was allowed to throw stuff at you.
Yeah.
And at some point, sometimes... Well, yeah, not that. But at some point, the coach would come in from the basketball team and take a kid out of the room And you knew if he was doing that, he was taking him to the gym and knocking him around, beating him up a little.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and sending him back to the we all knew.
Simpler times.
Yeah, I mean, so much better.
Yeah,
some people look better with a black eye. I'm just saying, if it's not what it takes to get you to read, then that's what it takes. I don't know.
Yeah. And I do feel that, so many people, different parts of the public sector are going on strike.
Yeah.
And I think some of them, yes, doctors, yes, we need you, nurses, yes, we need you, firefighters, yes, if your house is on fire, we need you. You don't know if your house isn't on fire, but, if your house is on fire...
Or you want a good calendar at Christmas.
But there's other people, like civil servants and local council staff. And
we can do without. That's what I'm saying.
Who's going to even notice?
And teachers made the big mistake of going with lockdowns, right? And then we realised, your job can just be done on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's over.
Yeah, Coco Melon can take it over. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and the royal family do so much for us. They open supermarkets, they appear on stamps, but not everybody's happy with them, Scott.
Apparently, the Republicans are threatening coronation protests. The anti-monarchy group, the Republicans, is saying that they want to disrupt the crowning of King Charles by carrying out large demonstrations. And it's funny because they interviewed one of the guys, and his name is Mr. Smith. And he says, in terms of plans, we're going to do something. We got to talk. There needs to be hugs. We haven't really planned anything in particular. We're going to get there early. And they think early is like 6:30 a.m. That's not early. Early is the day before, you lazy.
Yeah, not
protesters.
for a coronation.
Yeah, you've got to get there like days. And then they know they can't because the police will come and hose them. So they're going to try to get there like 6:30, a bit of tea, wake up. And then you're not our king. The thing is, he is your king. And when they say that, I just think, well, it shouldn't be, we don't want a king. Not just you, we don't want a king at all.
Yeah.
So really, this is the wrong thing for them to protest, isn't it?
Yeah, I want Prince Andrew as king.
Yeah. It surprised me that this is the thing that you think is the big issue you want to protest in the country. We've got illegal immigration, out of control, housing crisis, cost of living, inflation. You're like, I'll tell you what, it's the guy with no real power, who's a sort of ceremonial role that's bothering me. I mean, the royal family, let's be honest, are destroying themselves anyway.
Yeah.
They should be protesting against Harry not writing another book. That's the only thing they should do. If you go to his house, say, Harry, we demand a sequel.
I like the book. I miss his mom. I like the book. But yeah, it is an odd thing to protest. I think it's the 1.8 trillion that's... It's just they don't like it, and
You just added
there's that.
But it does. I mean, they're gonna go along to the coronation parade and stand there, and they're gonna wear yellow, which apparently is a Republican colour. It's also, it's a kind of weak colour.
Yeah.
I think in France, if they tried to depose their monarchs wearing yellow, it wouldn't have worked.
But he's just to round them all up, though, won't it, for the police, just all the yellow ones.
And there might be like 1,000 of them, but they'll be drowned out, though.
Yeah.
God save the king.
Well, that's what Rishi's saying. He's saying they don't have public support. So, it'd be nice for, even, if you're not a Republican, I think it'd be nice for the nation to unite over the coronation a little bit. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now with some good news. Those Grand National protesters were apparently beaten up by police, Nick.
Yeah, the Grand National activists claim they were brutalised by police during arrest. This is Animal Rising, which sounds like a rubbish indie band. And they say they suffered broken bones, dog bites, and pepper spray burns.
Yes.
But the police have yet to receive a complaint, so we don't know if they actually did. And obviously, look, I don't love police aggression, but if I was going there...
Some kid got hit in the back of the head with one of those ballers that they wheel around.
It's not great, and I would prioritise Just Stop Oil and all those Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion. I think they're more hated than the Animal Rising people, but they're all fairly hated. They don't really have a coherent idea either what they want, because there was a racing pundit who was saying, OK, we've got 50,000 thoroughbred horses. What happens to them after we abolish horse racing? Well, there you go.
But 2 horses died that day, didn't they? 2 horses?
I think it was 3.
See?
Actually,
That's bad.
But the thing is, the argument is far more would basically die. They'd be left to sort of flounder if we didn't have racing.
Or just let them run free.
Yeah, but then apparently they just kill each other and
apparently the horses that died, because the protesters disrupted the start of the race, so they couldn't do the parade ring, so the horses were anxious and nervous, and then they made mistakes. So these protesters, some people are saying, they killed these horses.
I'm worried about the jockeys.
Yeah, the jockeys get hurt as well.
They're anorexic.
And so they've got brittle bones.
We got to feed them more. That's the thing. That's what I'm protesting.
Then they can't, run on the horses. I don't think we can have body positive, beautiful at any size jockeys.
I think the whole thing's a problem. Horses dying, anorexic jockeys. Protesters don't know really what they're doing. It's all a disaster.
OK, well, The Guardian now, and if you work for BuzzFeed News, here are 22 reasons you're going to be down the job centre tomorrow. Yeah. Number 12 will change your life, Nick.
Oh, I've got that one. BuzzFeed is shutting down what remains of its award-winning news department. Apparently, they're a high-quality news feed, and they were doing well in the 2010s. They raised millions of pounds, and then the pandemic happened. They're blaming the pandemic. They're blaming the downturn of the economy. They're blaming all sorts of things. And the founder, Mr. Peretti, says that they've got to fire a lot of people. That it's going to be a sour day tomorrow when he knows who's going to go.
All the people at BuzzFeed News, in fact.
My favourite quote was, it says, Peretti suggested there may not be a sustainable business model for high-quality news online. I was like, well, what's that got to do with BuzzFeed? Because
I didn't know that they were high quality. I really didn't know that.
But looking at some of their stories, it's like it's like stuff about Barbie's friend. It's like, I feel like my life's over at 24. One of them was like, what if you have an overdose from weed? Here's what you can do. This is not high-quality news.
And weirdly, Disney almost bought it in 2014 and paid them £1 billion, and they turned it down because they thought they could raise more, running stories like that. Or things, a lot of women writing about, my child won't talk to me anymore. What should I do? This is not high quality. This is just an annoying mother.
Yeah, your child won't talk to you because you're too busy writing nonsensical list articles for BuzzFeed.
Here's one. Why Barbie's best friend Midge was once removed from shelves.
Yeah, that's high quality.
This high-quality journalism.
High standard.
So, and it's very, very funny because Andrew Tate is on there. They've attacked him before. And by the way, we're a bit of schadenfreude here because they would attack us. They would want to shut us down. So I think we can have a little pop.
If they knew who we were.
And Andrew Tate has said that he might buy them. He's got a poll going. Should he buy them and just sack all the nerds, as he's calling it?
They said that Vox is also suffering, and other
Vice,
other high-quality news feeds. But again, I don't think either of them or any are high quality.
We don't need any of these things.
BuzzFeed, in fact, is one of the first journalistic outfits to use AI to write stories. So they're pretty much completely. I don't know if a robot can win a Pulitzer Prize.
And another great quote is here. It says, Peretti said he regretted not holding the company to higher standards for profitability, i.e. making some money.
Making money at all. The Pulitzer's a highly questionable award anyway, as we know.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, that's part 2 done. Still to come, we've got trans athletes, blue ticks, and people getting stoned in public in the UK. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got Friday's Daily Mail now, and Ryanair boss wants us to rejoin the EU. He also probably wants to charge us €2 each to do it, Nick.
Yeah, so Ryanair chief flies off handle in Brexit rant. And this is Michael O'Leary. And he said in the next 5 to 10 years, quite a number of the Brexiteers will die, as the average age of them is about over 70. Nothing exact there. This is the usual hatred of the older people. And he says the younger generation will be more European. And he says he's optimistic now that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are in office. I'm glad one person's optimistic about Jeremy Hunt. But it's this hatred pouring out again over Brexit. And we know, like, we can debate the financial side of it, but of course Brexit was about sovereignty. It was about controlling borders, controlling our own laws. But people like Mr. O'Leary have not got over the fact that the plebs just wouldn't do what they're told, and they wanted Brexit.
And also, Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer, so it seems ridiculous to assume that he's going to roll it back.
I think the only problem is when it does roll back, and it will, I think Britain's going to be approaching the EU with hat in hand, which is not a great position for any country to be in. And the EU will make a demand that I think the British public is going to be very uncomfortable with.
I don't think it'll happen, because I think what will happen is maybe the old people who supported Brexit before, you know, some of them might die, but the rest of the people will continue getting older. So we'll have new old people. That is my theory.
But they're too lazy to get passports to young people. They don't want to bother, and they want to go to France and Germany anyway. I think what's going to happen is the EU's going to say, you can come back in, but you've got to change to our currency, give out the pound.
Well, I like getting a stamp in my passport, and I also like duty-free, so I think it's great. Anyway, the Mail reports are a real quandary. 3 gay men who all want to be the daddy, Scott.
I love this story. Ben Rollum, I only say his last name, you'll find out why later. Ben Rollum, he's 37, and his long-term boyfriend, Mitch, are from LA, of course, 37, both same age, Ben and Mitch, and they've been together for 17 years. 5 years ago, on a gay cruise, hallelujah. Have you ever been on a gay cruise? No, not you. Have you ever been on a gay cruise? Have you been on one?
I thought that was the only kind.
Yeah. It's they're really super fun. People wear flowers in their hair and they drink a lot and stuff, and then they have parties where they do drugs, and drugs are wrong. But anyway, they met on one of those, and they then met this guy that they fell in love with, another guy named Ben, 5 years ago. So they had a 3-way relationship, and then they had a formal ceremony where they kind of got together, and they all took on Ben Rollum's last name. So they're Ben, Mitch, and Ben Rollum, all 3.
Right.
And they decided
know how to roll them.
Right. And they're rolling all over. And they adopted a girl named Tegan, which is a gender-neutral Welsh name, if you're wondering.
Right.
And it means loved one. Anyway, they adopted her, and now they want. Don't make the face. This is a beautiful gay story. This is how progressive we are, how great the world is, that they can do this. They can adopt a girl, and then they can have 2 more by surrogate. They're going to have 2 more in the future. So there's 3 daddies and 3 kids. Adorable.
But they all want to be listed as the daddy on the birth certificate.
Because the sitcom is right around the corner, I think. Don't you think? There is.
Do you want to reject modernity and embrace
Gay Parent Trap? Come on, there's so many movies that can be made.
This is it's just the culture's completely unmoored from any kind of moral bearings. And obviously, I don't mind being gay, of course, but I have to say that because
Wait, are you gay? Are you coming out right now?
No, but if, you know...
In that suit?
There's not anything wrong with that, is what I'm saying.
Well, thanks for that.
But
as you back your chair up.
Are you really in favour of, like, throuple Scott? I mean, it's a kind of Rousseauian paradox of freedom, but everything is permitted, but under the state. So it's now legal that you can do this.
Yeah, why
it's
not?
It's kind of like the worship of the self. It's a kind of Aldous Huxley-esque kind of stupor of decadence. We're going to end up with all kinds of strange permutations and the whims of the individual. You can do anything you want, and so it's only going to get weirder from here. But isn't this?
And what's the next step then?
Yeah,
what's
that's what I'm saying.
Step?
I mean,
oh God! Oh, I'd love to have 3 parents and 3 gay dads living in LA. That'd be so fun.
Birthdays, wouldn't it?
Aren't you a bit worried, Scott, for the kid? Because it says Tegan is going to have is going to love having 3 dads. She will always have so much love. I'm thinking, and so much bullying at school. Surely, if you've got 3 parents...
I think in LA, she'll be the class president.
I forgot.
It's 2023. Oh my God, she'll be the only kid not getting bullied.
You're right. I grew up in the north of England in another era. You're completely right.
You sound old and crazy right now. I think it's great. And, you know, I mean, if they want to raise kids, why not? I mean, I don't. My husband talks about children all the time. And not for lack of trying. We don't have any.
Would you do a throuple, Scott?
Nick, really? I mean, keep our relationship professional, for God's sake.
All right. Things are getting steamy here, but we've got The Independent now, and Joe Biden is fighting hard for mediocre male athletes who want to be women's #1, Nick.
Yeah, so it's House Republicans passed bill banning transgender girls from participating in women's sports, but Joe Biden's vetoing it. As you've said, there 219 Republicans voted for it, 203 Democrats voted against. And this is the Democrats just showing their cards. They don't care about women's sports. They don't care about women. They're happy to see women's dreams crushed and their skulls potentially crushed in things like MMA. They don't care they're never going to win the swimming or the track and field again. And it's pretty appalling, really. This is the stance they've taken. They're completely wrong on this issue, but they're doubling down.
Yeah.
We are the champions with breasts. I think he's a breast president. He likes boobies. He said it before. So the more athletes with boobs, the better. The more he's likely to watch.
But these ones don't have boobs.
Well, eventually they might.
The trans. I mean, if you look at Leah Thomas, for example, the hulking great woman,
right.
Who's a biological male and trounced the competition, obviously with all the advantages of being a biological male. And I mean, there's no boobs there.
Right. Maybe easier to deal with, though. Don't you think? Less emotional.
I don't know, because they take hormones. Oh, so then, you know, you've got the...
Yeah.
They're greedy. They get everything.
The only thing that bothers me, I mean, at least you expect the Dems to be absolutely mental now, Biden's Democrats. William Hague the other day said, oh, yeah, we've moved too fast on certain things like women like biological men in women's sports. I'm like, what would be the right pace to ruin women's sports? This is where conservatism fails. It just sort of says, OK, progress, but just slow it down a little bit. But it's like, no, you have to take a stand on issues like this.
Yeah, the Overton window is moving inexorably over, and Conservatives don't seem to be able to pull it back.
I think the Democrats are misguided here, though, because I think parents are very worried about this. And any woman who votes Democrat is going to look at this and question her vote.
Well, fingers crossed. Anyway, we've got the Daily Mail now, and cannabis smokers are doing something I never thought they'd do, getting organised.
They are. The 400, a lot of cannabis smokers wound up in Hyde Park for 420, which is the cannabis celebration day because of, well, I won't explain that. But anyway, bucket hat-wearing cannabis smokers descended on one of London's busiest parks to celebrate the annual 420 event. And the police showed up and started arresting people because they had drugs and they were selling drugs. And the stoners started throwing bottles and getting angry at the police. I know.
Wow.
It's great, right?
That seems a bit rowdy for people who've smoked cannabis.
I would have read the rest of the story, but I was too high. But apparently there's a bit of you know, ouch, somebody got pulled by the arm and some cops were angry. And then I think the police probably bought some drugs.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm impressed they could get this many weed smokers out of the house and organised at once. I mean, it's a low-hanging fruit joke, Scott, but I had to do it. The other thing, it says here, smokers openly flout the law on April 20th. And you know when else they openly flout the law? Every other day of the year, because we already have virtually legalised weed anyway, right?
Yeah.
They're out there on the street doing it.
Everyone.
You smell it all the time.
I know, but who looks at our culture and says, you know what we need is like more open drug use and degeneracy. You walk around London, you can't get away with it. People in the middle of the day doing all kinds of drugs.
But when you say degeneracy, though, you see people throwing up and drinking on the street and completely hammered, not being able to leave the comedy club because they're so drunk.
Right,
I think stoners, you know, tend to go to comedy shows and laugh. And, you know, they throw tips at you because they don't know how much money they're spending. I think people that are high, the weed, it has to be legalized. So many conservative states in the U.S. have legalized weed, and they see the massive benefit around it. So
no,
I'm not sure. I mean, there is some tax money to be made, but I think, you know, if weed isn't addictive, why do they smoke weed every single day? Anyway, we've got The Independent now, and all those annoying lefties who were verified on Twitter before Musk took over won't have blue ticks anymore because they can't afford $8 a month, Nick.
Yeah, a bit of banter here. Elon Musk's Twitter finally pulls plug on verified blue ticks. He said he'd do it, and he has done it. They're all fuming. Femi's writing and furious tweets. And it's quite funny because people like Rachel Maddow, you know, big, massive newsreader, America, 10 million followers, doesn't have a blue tick. Don Lemon, James O'Brien in this country, Bill Gates, Boris Johnson, so everyone's losing their blue tick, and weirdly I've got one, so it's a strange reverse, because I got one just because you can post longer videos. I wanted to post my Andrew Bridgen interview, someone then tried to get me sued for it, so that worked out. But now it's a weird thing, it's like a total revolution on Twitter, where the blue ticks will be the must-supporting pro-free speech people, and the non-blue ticks will all the sort of weirdo legacy media type.
I think a lot of celebs are leaving Twitter anyway. I think people are scrambling away from it. He's leaving such a bad smell around his own business.
Really?
I don't know why. It seems as though... Look, I don't mind what he does. It's his business. He can do what he likes. And no one's holding a gun to your head to be on it. But I just feel like there's so much negative response to his own business. Things like this.
What have you seen on Twitter that's so...
No, I just see people saying, I'm leaving.
Oh, and so you see people being negative. You see left-wing people being negative.
And just leaving. I think, like Rachel Maddow,
rather than you don't see any the actual hate. You just see people responding to the imaginary hate.
And Maddow might not require a blue tick because she's not even on it anymore. I mean, I think maybe their assistants are writing Twitter feed and stuff, but I don't think people really follow it as much.
You just tried to corner Scott like Musk did with James Clayton. You just lied. That's what you just did. But,
I think they moved on to TikTok and other...
I don't think they've moved yet, but I think there is a danger. If Musk keeps doing this brilliant banter, like when he put 69% government funded on CBC's profile, very funny stuff, but there is a danger, I suppose, if you alienate enough of these dweebs, they'll all leave and it becomes Gab or Parler. But so far it hasn't, and so far it's great.
Yeah, I think it's the only place to be. Anyway, that's part 3 in the bag. But coming up, we've got lazy students, Suella fighting back, and insurance scams to try at home. See you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Sun now with a classic insurance scam getting found out, Scott.
Well, there's a driver, Forens Kiranovitz. He's from Norwich, and he was claiming £22,000 in damages from a minor car accident.
Yeah.
And he did go to Budapest and have some sort of back surgery, and then he went on vacation to Mexico and all over the place. And there's photos of him all over the internet, like sliding and
here he is,
hanging upside down, doing cartwheels, swimming.
That's a backstretch.
It doesn't look like somebody's suffering from prolapse discs.
And he says, he told the doctors, look, I can't do anything. I can't swim. I can barely walk. and apparently the insurance company has an investigative firm named Clyde and Company, and they said it's much easier now to find people who are fraudulent. They said that they've uncovered, and other UK insurers have uncovered, 89,000 fraudulent insurance claims worth $1.1 billion in 2021 alone.
Wow.
And they said, idiots like this make it so much easier for
I just think that picture's a great advert for Hungarian surgeons. I mean, if you can do that.
I know. And, that should be their Facebook.
But one thing, this was actually quite convincing. It said he insisted in court he wanted to enjoy sports for one last time after being warned he might not be able to following the surgery. So that actually is quite compelling. You're like, I'm going to get on the zip wire because after this, anything could happen.
So he's like Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, just one last time fighting through the pain. And he's now not getting his money either. Well, that's a shame. We've got the Times now with bad news for lazy students, but is there any other kind of student?
Yeah, Watchdog bans essay adverts targeted at students. And this was companies like Essay Mills, which does pretty much what you'd expect. It says, hire our online assignment creator and achieve your dream grades that will be the envy of your peer, your dream grades, i.e. grades that someone else has got for you. And then the British Dissertation Help company boasted a similar thing. It said, and it aimed itself specifically at students who are too lazy, students who are lethargic, or perhaps not interested in writing the paper alone. I mean, they've just said exactly what it is.
It's a real problem. My husband just had, adult education. He graduated a couple of years ago. And it's a constant warning from the teachers, and they really keep an eye on them. Right. But it's a huge business. And even as a student, he could tell in class who had bought their essays, and he knew the teachers kind of knew, but there's very little they could do about it.
Yeah, maybe they need another way of measuring students. Anyway, we've got The Guardian now reporting on librarians being threatened with violence by people who want to remove books they see as problematic. Probably because they've just read an article in The Guardian saying it's problematic, Scott.
Research carried out by the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, SCILIP, the UK's Library and Information Association, found out that a third of librarians have been asked by members of the public to censor or remove books, indicating that such indecencies and incidences had increased significantly in recent years. 82% of librarians said that they were concerned about the increase in such requests. Yeah, they're at the universities in California now, because I have a friend who teaches, he's the head of the drama department at one university. They have been asked to no longer teach Shakespeare at all. First, they were editing Shakespeare, particularly, some plays like Othello, they were concerned with, or Merchant of Venice.
Yeah.
Because it's anti-Semitic, even though Shakespeare makes clear in that play, very, very clear, that a lot of the behavior is anti-Semitic anyway. Yeah. They just don't teach it at all anymore.
And it seems so unfair because Shakespeare, considering it was hundreds of years ago, he was less racist than your average screenwriter in the 70s.
Yeah, but you wonder why is The Guardian speaking out against censorship, which they normally love, and you realise it's because it's a sort of disingenuous, gaslighting article. What they're talking about is people worried about decency and things being sexually explicit, and then they're conflating that with sensitivity readers. They start to talk about the James Bond novels and stuff. Yeah. But actually, most of the article is about people going, hey, maybe we don't want there's anti-colonial stuff and sort of critical race theory type stuff. That's what it is. Although some of it is things like Fun Home, which is a graphic novel I read, which didn't seem to be bad. So maybe they've gone too far. But really, they're conflating Conservatives worried about stuff very woke stuff in libraries, and this other issue, which is a genuine issue of sensitivity readers and so on.
Yeah, and they quote a lot of people who had libraries and Libraries Unlimited, a charity that manages libraries in Devon. And this woman says, we don't censor. Then another woman, a primary job is to look over librarians. She says, there's no censorship in public libraries. So they do a lot of quotes that counter this point. When the truth is, as we know, we've reported it many times on this show, they are, in the British Public Library here, the one near King's Cross, they are putting trigger warnings in the books, in the plays. They are. Yeah, they've been asked to.
Removing some books and having sensitive...
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Re-edit books.
It's ridiculous. Riddled with trigger warnings.
Yeah. The Independent now reports on Suella Braverman's strange plan to hit back against claims of racism, Nick.
Yeah, so Suella Braverman considered posing as radio caller to defend herself over racism claims, and you think, this is an odd one from The Independent, maybe they're onto something. Turns out it's a joke. It's Suella Braverman in her own Spectator column. This is journalism now. You just quote another article someone's written and you repackage it. In her own article, she said that she thought about calling in as someone called Margaret as a reference to Margaret Thatcher, because when they attack you personally, it means they have not a single political argument left, famously Thatcher said. So it's just Suella having a bit of fun, saying they're all attacking me, they've got no arguments, and I thought it'd be funny to call in, and that's all it is. And, you know, these
But
people...
it's being taken as a serious statement of
Exactly, because that's
intent.
journalism now. They should work for BuzzFeed. 22 reasons Suella Braverman is racist.
No, but they can't because there's no more jobs.
Yeah, they should learn to code. That's what BuzzFeed always said to everyone, isn't it? Yeah. So there you go. The people are obsessed with Suella Braverman. I know people in North London who actually think the Tory government is far right, and they just think Suella Braverman's so evil. But
I think it's because when she visited that prison camp in Africa, she's setting up, there were all those photos of her laughing and laughing. And I know that they're just photos taken, and that maybe someone told a funny joke. But were I her, I would try to present myself in much more serious.
Well, they cropped the photo to take out the two people she was laughing along with, and
no, I
made
saw
it
the
look
people in
evil.
the photo. I saw it.
Okay, you still didn't like the laughter.
I don't like it.
Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Friday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with unelected lords plot to block Rwanda plan. The Eye has Deputy PM Raab refuses to resign. The Guardian has Raab fights for political life. The Times has Raab stands firm as PM mulls over report on bullying. The Express has just why did the BBC ignore MP's call to protect women? The Metro has Elon, we have a problem. And that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much to my guests, Scott Caputo and Nick Dixon. Tune in to the same time tomorrow when Nick will be joined by Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer. Remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for the breakfast show just after the break. Bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess I've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Is Farage at Large, live from Aberdeen. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Thank you, James. Very good. Excellent. Now, tonight's show, we're going to be talking all things Scotland. The downward spiral of the SNP. Does that mean the Alba Party have a big chance? Charlie Abel from Alba joins us this evening live here on GB News. Aberdeen, the home of the oil and gas industry, but can they survive? Net zero policies, can they survive? 75% taxes on their profits. GB News' Liam Halligan joins me to discuss that. And joining me for Talking Pints. Well, you all know him from Coast and a whole host of other TV programmes. Now a GB News presenter. Yes, Neil Oliver is my guest for Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight: the Prime Minister won't be deciding upon the fate of his deputy, Dominic Raab, tonight, GB News understands. Rishi Sunak says he maintains full confidence in Mr Raab and is considering the findings of an independent inquiry into alleged bullying. The Deputy Prime Minister himself requested the report as the first allegation was made in November last year. 8 complaints were made by staff about Mr Raab's behaviour during his roles as Foreign Secretary, Brexit Secretary and as Justice Secretary. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry says a decision should be made quickly.
I think if he's got this report, he should just read it, and if the man's a bully, then Dominic Raab should go. It's really quite simple. There are many more pressing issues than this. Whilst the Conservative Party continue to be in chaos, the public have completely different priorities. Actually, what we should be doing is we should be having politicians who are focused on the cost of living crisis, on why it is that wages are stagnating, why we're having to wait for months, if not years, for hospital treatment. This shouldn't be what politics is about. Politics should be about making people's lives better.
Emily Thornberry. Now, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges is urging junior doctors and the government to find a solution to their deadlock over pay for the sake of patients and the wider NHS. Nearly 200,000 hospital appointments had to be rescheduled following the junior doctor strike last week. The Academy had helped to secure a deal between the two sides following strike action back in 2016. And the good news this evening that the senior detective in Northern Ireland who was targeted by gunmen has been discharged from hospital. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times whilst coaching a youth football team at a sports centre in Omagh last February. He'll continue his recovery, we're told, at home. Police have arrested 6 people in connection with the shooting, but no one has been charged. Drivers across the UK are being asked not to pick up their mobile phones during the government's emergency alert test scheduled for this weekend. The AA is advising motorists to switch off their mobile phones during the test. Laws banning the use of handheld phones in cars will still apply. The alarm is due to sound for 10 seconds from 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. And just lastly, in the United States, the most powerful rocket ever built on Earth has launched from southern Texas. Elon Musk's SpaceX sent the new rocket called Starship into space. The launch was initially successful, but then the booster component didn't separate as planned and exploded into millions of fragments moments later. The SpaceX team describing the moment as a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. British astronaut Tim Peake congratulated the SpaceX team, however, on Twitter this afternoon, encouraging them to test, learn and try again. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Aberdeen, where Nigel Farage has Farage at Large.
Good evening. Well, we're live here in Aberdeen tonight with a very enthusiastic crowd, and we're going to discuss all things Scotland. But to begin, a story that some say isn't relevant to Scotland. No, you'll often hear people say immigration is only an issue in England, and yet, when you look at the social attitudes survey, you find actually people in Scotland are as worried about illegal immigration as people in England are, even if Dover is a long way away. But with 90,000 people now having crossed the English Channel in dinghies, overnight we get the news that Rishi is about to get tough. Yes, the illegal immigration bill is going to be changed to say that the Home Secretary can ignore a judgment that comes late at night from the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. We'll also hear that British judges won't be able to stop deportations unless there are really threatening circumstances. So on the face of it, maybe we've got a bit of a solution to the cross-channel problem that is costing the country so dear. Well, bear this in mind. It'll all be dealt with case by case, judged by people who I don't think have the same view as the majority of the population. But worst of all, the government were in court yesterday against Braintree District Council. And this is over Wethersfield. It's the old military base in northern Essex that they want to use for people that are across the Channel, young men. The government, in its argumentation against Braintree District Council, said unless they had sites like that, they might not be able to provide suitable accommodation in line with Article 3 and Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. So on the same day, the government tell us they're going to get tough on ECHR, they're actually using ECHR rules under emergency powers to say that these sites must be filled. My advice is don't believe a single word that they say. But their problems are almost as nothing compared to those of the Scottish National Party. Now, to be fair, it's been a good day for Hamza Yousaf. It really has been a good day. Not a single senior official has been arrested all day. But they are in something of a political death spiral. And when a vacuum opens up in politics, it's an opportunity for others, and clearly Labour, very keen to get many seats back in Scotland, the Conservatives fancying their chances. But Alba, the party that was founded by Alex Salmond, clearly they must think they're in with a shout. I'm here with Charlie Abel, a founding member of the Alba Party, local man. The SNP, there's worse to come, I think, isn't there?
Well, it's not for me to say things about the SNP because I'm in the Alba Party. I left the SNP.
Yeah, but they are the governing party of Scotland.
They're the governing party of Scotland, yes, and they're in problems. There's no hiding from that. But that makes me sad, and I'm not here to celebrate the demise of the SNP because the demise of the SNP does not mean the demise of the case for Scottish independence. Scottish independence is much bigger than the SNP. It's much bigger than one party.
You say that, Charlie,
it won't go away.
But since 2014, independence or separation, whichever word you prefer, has become synonymous with the SNP. So surely if the SNP are going towards the floor. Surely the whole campaign is too.
That's part of the problem I've had with the SNP, and part of the reason ALBA exists is because, and other independence parties, not just ALBA, the SNP made it a one-trick pony, and they kind of had a monopoly on independence. And we can't have any single party having a monopoly on self-determination for the Scottish people. It has to be a bigger thing. We can't hook our fortunes of a political party to our self-determination, because the things that are happening in Scotland with child poverty at 25%, our resources being stolen from us left, right and centre, piped down
Stolen?
south. Yes, they're stolen.
Stolen?
Yes. These resources belong to the Scottish people. And they're being taken away.
Yeah, well, I think...
We don't get anything for that oil.
I know, but it's very interesting, this, because the oil argument, Alex Salmond, the founder of your party, a leader of your party, Alex Salmond, you know, for decades, argued that oil was the way that Scotland could be self-sufficient economically.
It's a bonus.
Yet the SNP's policy is, I think the whole of Aberdeen's going to be a giant wind farm, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, well, there's no problem having the wind farms. They're good, they're a great thing. They're a resource that we should harness, but there are other policies, like to shut down the North Sea. It's not something all the SNP agree with, but it seems to be more that the green tail is wagging the SNP dog.
Now, you believe passionately in Scotland being an independent country.
Absolutely.
I understand that. I respect that.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't believe it's the right thing for Scotland, but it's up to you and the people of Scotland to decide, and that's absolutely fine.
It's democracy.
But no, absolutely. Hey, I agree with you. There was a referendum in 2014, a once-in-a-lifetime referendum in 2014. And then...
What happened?
Hang on.
What happened?
Hang on a second.
To remain in the EU. What happened to that?
Hang on a second. There was another once-in-a-lifetime referendum in 2016, and it seems that ALBA and the SNP don't respect either result.
Yeah, well, remember, the Scottish people instructed a mandate in 2016 to the SNP government that if there was a material change of circumstances, such as being taken out of the EU against your will, which happened, that we would have another referendum.
No. You'd already voted. You'd already decided that in the EU referendum we would decide as a full United Kingdom. You can't have it both ways, can you?
Yes, no.
Well, yes or no?
Do you believe in self-determination of a people under the United Nations Charter? Because either you do or you don't.
Of course I do, but I don't. Of course. Look, hey, I've been an independence campaigner for 30 years, all right?
If it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me.
No, I understand the emotions behind it. Of course I do. Of course I get it. But you can't have a referendum every Thursday. That's really the point I'm making.
Yeah, well, people can have referendums when the people want to have referendums. And if the people ask for a referendum and Westminster says no, or the Supreme Court says no, as it did in December, then we have a problem, do we?
Well, listen,
we have an overwhelming mandate.
If there is another referendum in 10 or 15 years' time, then the once-in-a-generation test will have been passed. But listen, I know where you stand on this. You're very clear about it. You believe in it passionately. And, hey, we're GB News. We believe in open, free speech. That's why we're here as a channel. Let's move you on to something else really important, I think. The gender reform legislation. Does ALBA support that legislation?
In its current form, no.
OK.
No, because it interferes with women's rights. And the majority of the Scottish people don't agree with it. And we don't think that the Scottish National Party should be going to war with the Westminster government on the Section 35. But that does not mean for a second that we celebrate Westminster using the Section 35 to stop devolution laws that we've passed. And it's no reason for anybody to interfere with devolution.
But the big question, this gender legislation was opposed in opinion polls by 80% of Scots.
Yeah.
Has Holyrood now become rather detached from the Scottish people?
Well, that's part of a problem. The people that we vote for, especially in Scotland, they get a big mandate for independence, and it seems to have been sidetracked for other issues. And instead of fighting Westminster, if they really believe in the issues they have, they should get independence done, which they were promised
to deliver, and they haven't delivered. They've done pretty much nothing in 8 years. If they deliver their independence, and we have an independent Scotland, then let's have a vote in an independent Scotland, and never mind fighting Westminster for self-identification. It's self-determination they should be fighting for, and fighting the Supreme Court ruling in December. They just laid back. Did nothing about that. They did nothing about Brexit either. They tried to stop England getting their Brexit, which is ludicrous. If England voted for Brexit,
How much, Charlie Abel, how much do you dislike the English?
I don't dislike the English. It's nothing to do with the English.
But a lot of the Scottish nationalist movement has been profoundly anti-English, hasn't it?
Not
in a really unpleasant, nasty way.
We have lots of English people in my party, and there's absolutely nothing anti-English. We are for everybody. Everybody that wants to live in Scotland is welcome in our party, and it doesn't matter where they're born. Virtue of where you're born has got nothing to do with your politics.
I've seen I've seen myself a bit of anti-Englishness when I've been in Scotland before, but it could be just anti-Nigel Farage. It's possible. It's possible.
It's maybe to do with your political views rather than...
Well, it could be, yes. The fact that I believe in independence is why they don't like me. I don't know. Listen, it's really, really interesting how this is going to play out. I've no idea quite how, where this downward spiral of the SNP ends. One final thought. Clearly, Sturgeon, the others, are all damaged beyond repair and not coming back into frontline politics. I just wonder, Alex Salmond, a giant figure, a very personable human being in many, many ways, but is he too perhaps past his sell-by date?
Absolutely not. He's a young man. He's got plenty to offer the independence movement. And if you want to win a fight, you want your best fighter in the ring, and there's no shadow of a doubt. He's one of the greatest figures in Scottish politics over the last 100 years, and if I'm on a team, I would like to have him in my team.
I don't doubt for a minute he's a great scrapper. I don't doubt for a minute he's been hugely influential. I just wonder whether his credibility has taken a big knock too.
There's no issue with his credibility at all.
Well, I tell you what, thank you very much indeed for coming on, for making the case for Scottish independence and separation, and we're going to watch Alba with very, very great interest, and thank you for joining us this evening on GBNews. In a moment, we will look at the oil and gas industry, Aberdeen being the centre of it. Can it survive with Scottish Government and indeed Westminster Government policies? Oil and gas in just a moment. All right.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, I'm here today with Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, and we're in Aberdeen, this amazing, bustling place that's produced oil and gas and technology and innovation. And I wonder, the SNP government have turned their backs on the oil and gas industry, believing wind farms are the future. The British government have put taxes up to 75% on the profits from the North Sea. There are 25,000 people, I believe, in the Aberdeen area working in this industry.
Directly, yeah. And many more on top of that.
And many more outside of that, because it's good money that's being earned. Does it have a future?
I think it does. This is the oil and gas capital of Europe. But, you know, years ago, at the turn of the century, Britain was producing almost 3 million barrels of oil a day, largely centred on Aberdeen from the North Sea. And now it's significantly less than 1 million barrels a day, but it is still a really significant industry. It is still vital for our energy security. And yet the government, as you say, has taken taxation in little more than a year on the oil and gas industry from 40%, so more than regular corporation tax, from 65 and then to 75%. That was going to be in place until 2025. Now it's 2028. Imagine raising the money to spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of pounds on an oil and gas exploration project and a drilling project, and then suddenly, from out of the blue, the state says, you know, you were going to be taxed at 40% on your profits, you're now going to be taxed at 75%. That's completely ruinous. And my concern is that the British state, the government, is just too politically convenient and attractive for politicians based in London to squeeze the oil and gas industry, and it massively impacts jobs, it massively impacts our energy security, and it will actually lead to less tax revenue because a lot of oil and gas projects will just be made completely invalid.
But in meeting our net zero targets, if we don't produce our own and import it from the rest of the world, they'll consider that a victory, won't they?
They will. And the First Minister of Scotland, Hamza Youssef, he was here in Aberdeen very recently, as locals will attest, and he says that Aberdeen can become the net zero capital of the world, whatever that means.
Please explain, interpret.
Look, there are definitely green jobs to be had. There is definitely industry there. I mean, down the coast at Teesside, people here in Aberdeen, huge connections, obviously, between the northeast of England and Aberdeen. They'll know that they're building carbon capture processes, lots of green jobs going there. But can it really replace the oil and gas industry in terms of the impact, the transformational impact on the local economy and indeed the national economy of Scotland? Look, we are, with the Norwegian government, constructing, as a United Kingdom, the largest offshore wind farm in the world at Dogger Bank, smack in the middle of the North Sea. That is not to be sniffed at. Whether or not that's the sum total of our energy policy, I don't know, but it shouldn't be because, of course, renewables by their very nature are intermittent. We haven't really worked out how we store that energy effectively. We're going to need hydrocarbons for years, probably decades to come. It seems to me short-sighted in the extreme to just keep turning the screw on them in terms of taxation.
And that Dogger Bank, you know, the biggest wind farm in the world, but all these people in this